Hi, thank you for joining me for today's process video, and today's video is day 5 of 30 Days of Sketches with Christie's Beautiful Life series 18, and today's sketch you can see in the top left hand corner there is by Alyssa Flanagan. I hope it's Alyssa, and she's at Bangs and Glasses on Instagram. I'll make sure I leave her details in the description box down below. So once again, I'm using the page starters from Arden Creative Studio. I just thought these would go perfectly with this photo. It's a photo of loads of plates of oysters when we were on our holiday in Herm last year. It was my dad's 80th birthday, and we'd been on an oyster tour of the beds, and then we came back to the hotel to have champagne and oysters. It was just lovely. My dad loves oysters, I do, and it was just a really nice experience. We all thoroughly enjoyed it. The weather was kind to us as well, which always helps. So you can see here I'm matting the photo onto some of the pattern paper from the 6x8 paper pad. I wanted to have the frame showing, and that wasn't entirely possible. The frame was rectangular and my photo's square, so I've just trimmed it in half and pieced it together as best I can. By the time I finish with this layout, you won't notice the joint at all, but this little strip of pattern paper definitely helped on the left hand side. So I'm just going to distress all those edges now. And then I need to start working on those squares that Alyssa has got on the sketch. This one had me scratching my head a little bit to begin with, but I'm absolutely thrilled with the outcome of the layout. It's really subtle and just beautiful colours. I love the colours in these page starters. They're quite subtle, but they just work really nicely together. So I'm going to start off with squares, and I think these are 1.5 inch squares that I started off with for the majority of the squares that go across the page. They're showing as pink in the sketch. And I'm just going to trim 1.5 inch strips and then cut those down into the 1.5 inch squares, and then roughly position them where they're going to go on the layout. So as I say, I start off with this peach coloured paper. I'm then going to come in with more of a pinky peach. It's very subtle, the differences between them, and a yellow for the different sizes of squares. And I'm being very frugal, as I often am, and where a square goes off the edge of the page, I am cutting that in half so I can use it in 2 places. So it does take a little while to go round and do all of this, and then I'm going to peel it all back because I want to add the mixed media on the background. But this is just giving me an idea of how the page is going to look, and that's why I wanted to go through this process before doing the mixed media. So the mixed media looks like it squiggles and smushes in the background. So I'm going to get around that by using my mini brayer on a diagonal. And then I'm going to bring in some of the Hey Little Magpie stamps to create texture on that background as well. So almost there with this trimming. It does take a little while, but it was worth, as I say, doing this placement just so that I could see roughly how the layout was going to sit together. And I'm not brilliant at visualizing sizes, but I guessed at 1.5 inch, and I think I got it just about right for these bits of squares. I did have to finagle a little bit at the end with the other pieces that I've cut, but like I say, the layout at the end was lovely, and you'll see it in due course. So I think this is one of the last pieces to go down now. And now I'm going to look for the other pieces for the other 2 sizes of squares. So I definitely wanted to use this beautiful yellow. It'll bring out the yellow of the lemons on the page, on the photo. So just trimming this, and I'm pretty sure that I went to 2 inches. You might be able to see that better on the screen than I can from my tiny phone screen. I think these were 2.5 inches, and I think the other ones were 2 inches. So just popping those down where I think they're going to go on the page, just as I say, to give me a very rough idea. And looking at my page now, I definitely move them around. Here's the 3rd large square. And then there are a few of the medium-sized squares. Oh, I noticed that I've missed a couple of the 1.5 inch, so I'm just cutting those out now. It's funny, isn't it? Even though I've got the sketch in front of me there on my desk, it's off the screen, so you can't see it. I still wasn't great at following exactly how things were. So that gives me the rough idea of how things are going to be with those. So just the small squares now, and you can see me flicking through the book to see what I've got. And I definitely wanted to go for one of the more pinky colours. So there we go. I'm going to go with one of these So it is different from the peach that I've added down, but it's a very subtle difference when I add this to the page. I'm actually using the other side, this side that I'm showing now. I just love that watercolory feel with the meadow flowers on it. So there's one piece going there. I think I've swapped those around when I've stuck everything down, but it does look nice the way I've done it, so I'm not too concerned. Trying to decide which side of the paper to use. Still messing. There we go. So now I'm going to take them all off. I'm putting them in the stacks of the sizes of squares and leaving them to one side so I can add all that mixed media. Here we go. So first of all, I'm coming in, I'm pretty sure it was iced spruce that I used, which is a greeny grey. And then there's my mini roller. And as I mentioned, I'm going diagonally across the page because the squiggles sort of look like they were diagonal behind all the squares on the sketch. So that's what I was going with. And then when that's down, I wanted to bring in the pink and also the yellow. These are the colours in the collection, and I also thought they would just work really beautifully with the colours of the photo. So I'm using my grids, the distressed grids stamps from Hey Little Magpie, and this is, I think it was saltwater taffy, which is that lovely peachy pink. And I'm just going to put this grid down just in various places on the background. This is just going to peek through all those squares that are going down, so I'm not too concerned. And it does look a bit odd, I must admit, when I've done this background. I did think, oh gosh, what am I doing? But it looks beautiful once it's all together at the end. So just adding that in a few places to make sure that it shows all over the layout. And then just bringing the photo in to check that I'm happy with the positioning. So now I'm coming in with scattered straw to add some yellow. And I've used one of the script stamps from Hey Little Magpie. Again, this is just adding different textures to that background and creating some interest. So I'll pop this down, and then I decide that I want to use the roller again, the mini brayer, just to add a little bit more of that ink to the background as a colour wash. So once I finish stamping the script, I'll come in with that brayer. Almost there. So I think I finished with it, but then come back and add a bit to my glass mat and then just brayer some on. And just want little specks of it showing around the page, so not being too precious, not doing huge long rolling motions, just adding little dots about the page. And then when I do that, I decide that I just want to add a little bit of stenciling as well, again just for a bit of differential. So this is the geometric pattern 1 from Hey Little Magpie, one of our brand new 6x8s or A5 stencils, and I'm using antique linen, which is a slightly more subtle yellow than the scattered straw. It's slightly paler, and just blending that around the page again, just so that those shapes just show a tiny bit, but barely. So bringing the photo back in, and now I'm going to reposition those papers more or less where they were, but each square I'm going to distress with my Tim Holtz edge distresser. So you'll see me doing a few, and then I'll fast forward so you don't have to watch me doing all of this because it's pretty monotonous. But I'm really making sure that they're well roughed up, and I've got some really nice texture going on there. And then the ATG is just going in the middle of the square so that the edges are still casting that lovely shadow and they're free on the page. So I can rough them up a little bit so that they just sit nicely on that page. You can see there, just pushing them in. So that's the first layer done. That was the small squares, and now I'm coming in with these larger squares. I'm just going to position a couple, and then I want to get the photo stuck down because I'm worried that things are going to go awry if I don't get that down. So bringing in the 2-inch and 2.5-inch squares, so the yellow and the peachy pinks, and just deciding where they're going to go. I'm not convinced, looking at the sketch, that some of the positioning works with the sizes that I've gone for, so I just wanted to have a little play. So I did put that yellow one up there at the beginning, and then decided that I wanted the peachy pink one there instead, and the yellow at the bottom here. So those are the two that were swapped around. So I'm going to bring in my foam pads. All these larger squares I want to mount up onto foam pads just to get that lovely shadow casting across the page and get the texture and depth So just adding one foam pad to the middle of these medium squares. Get that one stuck down, and you can see how it just overlaps the other two, and then the shadow makes it look really effective. This second one, I'm going to distress all the edges, and then I add the foam pads. I'm going to add 2 to these bigger squares, and then decide that I definitely want to stick the photo down before I go any further. So you'll see me doing that shortly. So I'm just about to take those off, and then I think, no, definitely want to get that photo down. So I'm going to raise that onto foam pads as well, because I do want that yellow square to overlap it slightly in the corner like it does on the sketch. And that's where the title's going to go as well. So just making sure that the foam pads are nicely in place. Struggling to pull the backing off there. Almost there. And then I can get that situated. And it is going more or less centrally on the page. I'm just doing it by eye today. So that this larger square can go there, and then you can see I've added the other ones where I positioned them before. So now I'm going to start embellishing. So I start off with the laser cuts from this collection. I definitely want a word or a phrase down at that bottom left-hand corner, but I'm not quite sure what I want to add there. Find a ticket, a yellow one in the end, and tuck it behind the photo on the bottom left. And then I look through the ephemera pieces just to see what I can find in here. And actually that's where I pull most of the rest of the embellishments from. So I switch out that little word phrase to this green one that says, it's the little things in life. And so I'm just going to add that to the bottom. And then I don't know whether it's now, yes, I'm going to cut that ticket in half because there's such a small sliver showing. I think I may as well save the other half and glue that in place. And then I spot a little butterfly. This is from the laser cuts, which must have popped out when I was looking at those sheets. So just gluing that down. And you can see here, all of Arden Creative Studio products with Katie Petite are double-sided, which is fantastic. So if you wanted the butterfly facing the other way, you've got that option. So I find this title that says Together, and that is perfect because it is the whole family together. So I'm popping that down, although I do have to pull it up. You can see it's a bit wonky there. So I will pull that up in a little bit. And then some leaves. I find a couple of leaves to tuck into this little cluster here, and also one of these labels. So I'm just going to trim this in half again, and I will use the other half shortly at the top of the pet photo. But for now, just sticking that piece on the left there. And the leaves, I'm just going to add glue to the bottom of the sprigs so that the tops just rest on top of the pieces that have got foam behind them. So again, casting a nice shadow and creating a nice texture on the page. So here's the second one that I find, and I'm just going to tuck that behind the butterfly. So here's where I realised that title's not straight. I'm going to bring my T-square ruler in to prove it, and then I'll pull it up and glue it back down again. And then use my pencil to draw some guidelines to add my journaling. And that square really was the perfect spot to add the journaling on this layout. So just struggling to get that T-square flat over all the different heights that I've got in there with the foam pads, but I get there in the end. And I'm very nearly done now. I'm just going to add some butterflies to finish this off and a few other little bits and pieces. So while I'm doing this, please don't forget to check the description box down below for the playlist of everybody else who's playing along. There have been some issues adding to the playlist. I'm having some struggles. But if you just search the hashtag 30DSCBL18, which is 30 Days of Sketches with Christie's Beautiful Life, Series 18, you will find all the layouts. And there are a lot of people playing along on Instagram as well as on YouTube. So if that playlist doesn't have that many in, do check out that hashtag and it should bring them up for you. So I'm just writing the date on my label there. It's a tiny little label, so I decided that handwritten would be best, and that's the layout done. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed my interpretation of this sketch. I'll see you again soon. Bye.